Hi, everyone. I'm Sue Hilliard. Welcome to day 2 of EA Zoom Meetings 2023 Year Ahead Panels. We'll have 3 days of panel discussions featuring some of your favorite astrologers with lots of discussion about the astrology of the coming year. We'll try to monitor the chat for any pertinent questions that come up as we go along. We're scheduled to go up to 3 hours each day, but it may not go that long, and we'll take a short break in the middle. We all hope that you enjoy what we have to say. Robin Grabfelder is now going to introduce today's panelists to you.
Hi, everyone. Michaela Villiers-Kendall is going to moderate today's panel. She is a clinical hypnotherapist and astrologer certified in psychological and evolutionary astrology. We have Gemini Brett, and he is an astrologer, a shamanic storyteller, educator, and he is best known for reconnecting astrologers to the living sky, and he has been awarded by OPA with an Orion Award for outstanding contribution to astrology. Marie O'Neill is a life coach, astrologer, author, lecturer, and past life progression facilitator, and the founder of Padma Life Coaching. Ryan Evans is a certified master level evolutionary astrologer for over 20 years. Nia Fyler is an evolutionary astrologer, lecturer, and teacher, and he acts as the Israeli representative of the Organization for Professional Astrologers. Varena Borell practices archetypal and shamanic and evolutionary astrology and reads Akashic records. Michaela, can you start the panel?
Hi, so this is EA Zoom 2023 Transits, part 2, panel 2. This is January to mid-August. Here's a list of transits. So this is for your reference as well. We won't be covering all of these. The other panels will be doing some of them, but just to keep everything in sequence. So we have Mars stationary retrograde conjunct Ain and Aldebaran. That's at 8-10 degrees Gemini, January 20th, 12th. We're going to start with that one. I won't list them all now. We'll, but that's for your reference. So we'll just plug on. Okay. We plugging on? Okay. Okay. Right. Okay, let's just start with that. Forget the intro. Can you see that? Can you see Mars? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, great. So this is Mars stationary direct conjunct fixed stars, Ain and Aldebaran. Just say something about that. As you can see, I've got Xi Jinping, the president of China, on there. And that's because I noticed that the station is actually of Mars is actually conjunct his Jupiter. And so it's picking up his chart, and also Pluto, I think, is picking up his Pluto, is being picked up by the Venus star that we'll talk about later. So Ain and Aldebaran, they are fixed stars in Taurus. At least they were in Taurus, but because of precession, they're now in Gemini. And they are connected with the military quite a lot, and with military action, with ambition. And Xi Jinping is pretty much to do with all of that anyway. He's pretty militant, as we know. But China at the moment is having great difficulty. It has sort of imploded, and now he's not the most popular person. He seems to be taking out the protests that have occurred all over China, the protests to do with the COVID lockdowns, the zero lockdowns that he had. And now he's lifted them all, and now it's breaking out all over the place. So I think they've got about 800,000 cases just as we speak, and it's mounting all the time. So it's as though he's taken it out on them. This obviously is a solar chart. We don't have a time for Xi Jinping. But the moon wouldn't be that far from that position there. And obviously that's getting sextile as well. But certainly his nodal axis is going to get hit this year as well, as we'll see later. So, I mean, it's just about there. I think the nodal axis is just about there now, or almost. But anyway, it will be soon. Well, you can see on here. You can see on the Mars stationary direct. You can see where the nodes are, and if I can pick them out. Yeah, they're not there yet, but they will be shortly. Okay, so the worrying thing about this is that obviously he is losing popularity, and that's made him react with lifting all the restrictions, but he seems like he's taking it out on people. And if a leader is suddenly unpopular and trying to claw it back, he might very well make some move, the Taiwan business is sort of in the offing. And so it is possible he might make a move on that just to detract from his unpopularity and the protests. So it's a bit of a dangerous situation with him, I think, and I think we need to keep an eye on that. And Aldebaran, as I say, is well known for, it is the star of it is the royal star, but it's the royal star of Set. So anyway, does anyone else have something to say about that, or shall we move on?
I'm wondering what you think about Joe Biden's Saturn being there at 10 Gemini.
Wow, really? Wow. See, I didn't have time to check Biden's as well. I did wonder about that, but that's a 10. Well, I mean, Aldebaran is at 10. So I don't know if you can see, it's so small there, but on the chart, but you can see it's at 10. So absolutely. Wow.
Well, but it's also, it's the king maker, but it's also the king breaker, depending on how that individual is using their ego, really. I mean, we saw that
Very
with,
true.
yeah.
Mhm.
And yeah, where they're coming from. So you're seeing two entirely different individuals. Their purposes are different, or maybe words and purposes. But to me, their purposes or their reason for being in politics is different. One is really more ego driven, and I'm not sure. I don't know what Biden's ego is like, but I don't believe that at this point he's as ego driven as the Chinese.
Yeah, well, he doesn't seem like a pathological narcissist, does he?
Right.
So at least, as obviously Jinping is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And those fixed stars will make you pay if you
True,
are
Yeah,
not
you've
above
got a
board.
really good point there, Marie. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So it could go against, I mean, I think it will eventually go against him anyway. I mean, Pluto's going to be hitting his moon one way or another very soon, and his nodal axis. So he is going to feel the pressure, and obviously the Venus as well. That's going to get eventually. So he will not do well out of this anyway, but his reaction might be just to go completely overboard the other way,
He could, especially with Jupiter.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So I want for people who are listening out there who have Aldebaran in their chart like I do, to also receive some of the potential good tidings about Mars stationing direct there in Gemini, and what might this mean globally, also in a good way, right? I mean, they say in Aldebaran, like, it's the bullseye. If you're not living a life of bullshit, pardon my language. And it's a really powerful place for Mars to be, right? Opposite Antares at Aldebaran. So that essence is just the tropical Gemini of our day and age. What might we feel about, Mars spending so much time in Gemini as he is, and what does it mean to be retrograding back to the sensitive star? Like China and politicians aside, like how can each of us work with this or might expect in our own lives? I guess the question that I have for the panel.
This is really good. Yeah.
I think, Mars is in such a powerful position when we see that it is the apex point of a yacht. So it's in conjunct its ruler, Mercury, which has just had his Cazimi. So it's already a morning star, but still retrograde in Capricorn. And it builds an in conjunct, Mars is building another in conjunct to the South Node in Scorpio. So I have the feeling that this is a moment, and Mercury, Mars ruler, so Mercury as the ruler of Gemini, so it's Mars ruler, is in a trine to the North Node, and Uranus retrograde in Taurus. So I have this feeling that when I look at the chart, completely independent from Xi Jinping's chart, just the chart of Mars stationing direct, I think it's a moment of, it's still a moment of deep, deep reflection, what we have learned since Mars moved into Gemini. So Mercury is already a morning star, so it's definitely a moment of, we are slowly but surely stepping forward, but it's still a moment of deep reflection, and about a moment of deep reflection, what are our values, so that we are really taking action in a Taurian way. So in alignment with what is worthy, what is important for us, and from a place of inner stability and inner ground and integrity, Mercury in Capricorn, and not getting lost in all of these maybe Gemini options. So especially with the South Node in Scorpio, I think it's a moment of deep reflection and what we have learned so far with Mars retrograde.
Oh yeah, that's so good. Because Gemini is that planet of perception. I'm sorry, the sign of perception with Mercury there, and our perceptions. How do we create our perceptions? Where do they come from? And a lot of times our perceptions are not actually reality. So that Scorpio is, like you're saying, let's go deep, let's figure out what the actual truth is. And of course, truth, when we get to what we perceive as truth, it's actually deeper than that. So it's always moving and always changing. And I love how you put that, Varena.
Yeah, jamming on what you were saying, Marie, which was awesome. It feels like with Gemini, we've got a choice of moving forward with pieces of information, Mars very passionately, or we could have the courage to actually, reduce our own opinions and listen. So at this point, are we going to listen? Are we going to pay attention? Are we going to gather? Are we going to hear what everybody else is saying and get all the information before we make a choice? Or are we going to take our little pieces, call it opinion, and then make a choice? One seems a little more healthier than the other.
Sure does.
I love that. And especially Mars is built a trine to Venus in Aquarius too. So Venus, all about listening, and in Aquarius, going one step back, observe our own thoughts. Gemini, and decide from a place of a certain kind of objectivity, listening to ourselves and others, and then stepping forward from a place of peace.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there is a huge instability, though. There's a longing, as you say, with the grand trine in Earth for a stability. And with Hygeia there too, which is about balance, isn't it, in Capricorn, right there at 9 degrees Capricorn. And but we long for that and try to head for that with the North Node in Taurus. But there's Uranus right there, sort of rocking the boat a bit. So we're trying to make sense, like you were saying. We're sort of trying to get the facts together and connect everything to make sense, to try and get things stabilized again.
Oh, absolutely. And with Gemini, because it's one of those signs that is so open to information. It doesn't judge. It just wants the information. And so it's not stagnant and it's not dogmatic. And so that is really the energy that we need to be able to go through through this period of time.
like an
Yeah.
icebreaker or something. Yeah.
Indeed, I totally agree. And for any air sign, if you're looking for stability, it's more of a flow. It's a rhythm that needs to be comfortable, not tiring on the one hand and exhausting, and not staying stagnant in one place. So it's more of a in and out breathing motion, if you will, if we're talking about air. When it comes to the motion, the Gemini seeks stability in.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Great. Okay. I mean, so at least it's going direct, Mars, and it'll be going towards that square with Neptune then. So we can press ahead to that if everyone's happy with that. See what we make of that. Oh, there's an iceberg ahead.
Ouch.
Iceberg.
Reverse course.
Now let's see if I can get my next slide up. That will be the no. That's the next one. Okay, isn't it? That's the next in the agenda.
Yeah.
So we first got Saturn in Pisces. So I think Ryan was going to introduce that, and you're going to Brett, I think. Weren't you? Weren't you going to press ahead with
I'm
that?
sure we all have some things to say about that.
Who wants to go first?
But, yeah, Ryan, bring us in.
Sure. Thank you. And
Mr. Pisces.
I will enter this Piscean realm of Saturn with a reading from the good book, Henry David Thoreau's Walden, chapter 2, Where I Lived, What I Lived For, Saturn and Pisces. He didn't preface it by saying Saturn and Pisces, but he could have. Here we go, and I'll be brief. Let us work and settle ourselves and wedge our feet downward through the mud and slush of opinion and prejudice and tradition and delusion and appearance, that alluvion which covers the globe, through Paris and London, through New York and Boston and Concord, through church and state, through poetry and philosophy and religion, till we come to a hard bottom, rocks in place, which we can call reality, and say, this is, and no mistake, and then begin, having a point de puy, below freshet and frost and fire, a place where you might found a wall or a state, or set a lamppost safely, perhaps a gauge, not a nilometer, but a realometer, that future ages might know how deep a freshet of shams and appearances had gathered from time to time.
Very good. Yeah.
So welcome to Saturn and Pisces. Saturn wants form. Saturn wants what works. Saturn is our bones and our skin, without which we would not go anywhere and we would be a big exposed blob. So Saturn is very functional. It is form. It is reality. But Saturn coming to the season of Pisces, that season of letting go of the past and imagining the future and that nebulous realm in between, how do we find our stability? How do we find our structure? How do we find our reality? Oh, we are so grateful for Saturn. Again, our bones and our skin. We're very grateful for our boundaries and our limitations. And so we come to Saturn in Pisces and we say, what is the dream that is really worth dreaming? If all of reality, Sun Neptune here, if all of reality is a dream, how can we make this dream the most beautiful, delicious Eden possible? That takes work, that takes effort, that takes laying of a foundation in a very thoughtful, calculated way. But here we are motivated by the dream world of Pisces. So how to bring form to our dream, or concurrently, how to inject more dream into our form. So, as I see it, our best of all possible paths through this transit that will be affecting all of us differently is how can we sift through the BS? How can we sift through the superfluous, the pie in the sky? Oh, it would be so great if we had world peace and I can imagine it. And I'm not going to do anything about it, but sit here and just dream about it. No.
Go back and say how we deal with or work with Saturn and Pisces is determined by how well we have evolved with Saturn through the other signs, because Pisces is the last sign in the zodiac. So we have to go back over our lives for 28 years. And in particular, we have to go back to Saturn in Capricorn and Saturn in Aquarius to see how we navigated that particular time in our lives, because that is the setup for Saturn in Pisces. Because, you know, if we've done the work throughout over the past 28 years, now we and Saturn is fine with that. That's where
That's
I sit
great.
with that. Yeah.
That's great. That great description.
When I reflected about Saturn and Pisces, I went back to Saturn and Capricorn. So I think it's really helpful when we reflect a little bit where we came from. So with Saturn and Capricorn, I had the feeling that old structures have crumbled and the world broke apart. And then with Saturn and Aquarius, we had to socially distance. So everybody had to think about how what rules of life one has. So I have the feeling with Saturn and Aquarius, many of us detached from the noun and questioned their rules of living and their structures. And now we are at this point, we know what is not longer working, but the new structures are not really built. And I have the feeling that the Saturn in Pisces has this potential to wash away everything that is no longer in alignment with truth, so that we then finally start something really new when Saturn moves maybe into Eris. But I have the feeling that this dissolution and this dissolving process with Saturn and Pisces, this washing away of every structures, every institutions, every life roles or rules of life that we have on an individual level, it can be very fruitful on the one hand, because what remains is truth, but it can be very, very scary and confusing, especially when we are not aware of these processes. So we could have the feeling that everything is like being drawn from underneath our feet. And I think that the question that we maybe want to ask ourselves is, how can we work constructively with confusion? Because I think when our ego is confused, it's actually a good thing, because then more truth can come in and our quote unquote higher self has more space, and we are able to build structures that are in our flow. So loving structures that help us to expand and grow with us. But I think it's so important to really work constructively with confusion during this transit, so that we don't get lost and maybe fall back into Capricorn, going back to old structures because we are so afraid.
Yeah.
I totally resonate with that. I'm sorry. Marie, do you want to say
No,
something?
no, I was just going to, as you were talking, I was thinking about the John Lennon song Imagine.
Oh, wonderful.
And just, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So when I was thinking about that, and I want to go back to what Ryan was saying before, because I really resonate with what Ryan said and Ryan read. Talking about Saturn, Saturn doesn't bring happy, good, expansive times wherever it sits in the zodiac. And when it comes to such a broad place as Pisces, especially at our times, it's a bit of an obituary, if you will, to the Piscean age, to the old way of thinking, in a vast, uninhibited, there's no borders with Saturn. It's something very general, and it inseminates everything. So it's the general structures of society. It's the masses. It's the public. It's the way we run things generally. And in that sense, it talks about the masses and the proletariat, the weakest parts of our society. And in that sense, it talks about everything that is natural and not man-made. It talks about the sea, it talks about the forest, and it talks about the mountains and the earth and the air. And when Saturn comes to these realms, these places would be places of reckoning, would be places of new understanding and maturing and realignment in order for a new base to be built. But first, there must be a reckoning, there must be a judgment, there must be a maturation and a realignment. And in that sense, it's a disillusionment and a reality check. Yeah, that's very good. An obituary, as you say, to the age of Pisces. But what do we take that's good from the age of Pisces? And yeah, exactly. Sift out the rest. Yeah. And of course, if we're talking about organized religion as well, all over the globe, the old ideas, the old paradigms, the separation between spirituality and carnality as if there are two opposites. Then heaven and hell, we're going back to Imagine by John Lennon, there's no hell below us and no heaven up above, and it's just us making it a heaven or a hell right now.
Yep. Yeah. And Saturn's not our enemy. So many people see it as an enemy, and it just wants us to get it right. Whatever. Yeah. All that in Aries, there is, look at that with all that in Pisces and then all that in Aries. It is like it's the ego against spirit, against the imagination, against, left brain, right brain sort of thing. So there's the conflict going on there that we need to resolve. And Saturn is asking us to look at that. And not give in to the depressive energy that this combination of Neptunian and Saturnian energy might bring, and actually deal with it. Actually do create this stable new structure that we can build a better future on, when Saturn steps forward and the sky steps forward, and be willing to apply. That is brilliant. I loved what you said. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. And I would love to just jam on that for a second. Let's go dark for a second. Let's go all the way dark. Let's say,
dark does not mean bad.
Let's just say that everything goes to poo. Let's just say everything that are the least favorable expressions of everything astrological comes to fruition. Here comes Saturn and Pisces. Guess what? The hard work, our great work, Saturn is Pisces, having faith, remembering gratitude, acceptance, flow, and surrender. So I can say, astrologically speaking, that no matter what happens, it is in our best interest to have a very foundational structure in our lives of ways and means to access the gratitude function within us, the acceptance function within us, the flow function within us, no matter what happens.
Yeah.
Amen to
And-
that.
Yep. And I would add to that what is the ultimate goal? I mean, really, what is the ultimate goal of humanity? The ultimate goal for each of us? And I would say that the goal is for the personality, the ego,
Mhm.
to learn to do the bidding of the soul versus the personality as we have it now doing its own bidding and seeing the soul as subservient. So when I look at Saturn in Pisces, you know, when you look at it on its highest level,
Mhm.
the personality is doing the bidding of the soul.
Mhm.
That's the way I see it. And the battle, but we're in a battle. I mean, we've got this battle going, especially with the nodes with Scorpio. Scorpio is where you fight the battle. And it's this point of stripping away of what
Yeah.
no longer serves that ultimate goal. And the more our ego fights, the more pain we create ourselves. No, not pain,
Aries, yeah.
suffering.
Yeah, yeah. The more Aries, whereas, as you say, surrendering to the Piscean, which is obviously, I mean, Saturn's in trine to Scorpio South Node, and it's style the North Node in Taurus. So in order to, restructure ourselves, we have to surrender first and go into the Scorpio South Node and let go of all the material, the structure that we have now. We
Right.
won't let go. We're so scared of losing it.
We
I think
are
there's a lot
because
of
we
mourning.
yeah, there is.
Sorry, man.
No,
Yeah,
no,
I think
no,
there's a
no,
lot of
there is a
mourning
lot.
in Scorpio. There's a lot of mourning for the state that we realize that we're in. In a sense, the rupture of consciousness level of humanity over the last 10 years. I am vastly and most surprising and most pleasantly surprised. You know, we've done an immense job in the last 10 years, you know, with the collective level. We still have a lot in front of us, but I mean, things that have become mainstream today, you know, the fact that, you know, even me as a transgender person talking to you and nobody has a big deal about it, you know, even that. You
Exactly.
know, we went a long way in parts of the world, and we still have a long way in front of us. I think there's a lot of mourning here and a lot of emotional pain that is surfacing within humanity. And I think a lot of people choose to drop out over these years. It's hard, it's depressing, and the more power and light we give people and ourselves, the better.
Yeah, there's a good amount of grief work. Saturn and Pisces. I mean, there's good news here in many regards. Like, I'm encouraged by a few things in the moment of Saturn's ingress. One, it's Virgo full moon. And so there does speak, like, I love Ryan from the great quote of the realometer, right? There is a earth, there is a ground to put our feet on, which Saturn, of course, needs and wants. We don't want to get lost into the fantasies of the woo if we're not willing to make it real, or get lost in what can't be real, to work with what is here, you know. But there is a beauty to Saturn and Pisces, which might help us discover the very fabric of the dream, you know. And you know, traditionally it's interesting, like Saturn is said to rejoice in the 12th house. And why is that? I often see it as the ability to bring a compass into a place that has no directions, you know, and to kind of define your own framework. And so Ryan, like in that wonderful reading, you kind of brought us to the ocean floor. It's like, oh, the ocean has bones too. You know, like I think we so often use that, and that's part of what the teachings are here. So not only is it Virgo full moon, but Saturn's coming out from under the beams at this time. And while Saturn won't be visible likely in northern hemisphere space, then in southern hemisphere places, like this will be right around the time where on one level Mercury's going away, he's becoming combust, he's in Pisces in that very kind of poetic, bardic, like Orphean state, right? Like very much interested, I think, in being a messenger for the dream world and are exciting us to explore and have visions and understand that fantasy is not bad, right? Attachment to the dream is where we end up in delusion space.
Yeah.
but
And
I
where
think
do we go? I mean, and what you're talking about, Brett, when I listen to you, you're talking about the mother archetype, because that is what has been missing. That's when I think about the moon in Virgo, Virgo represents the goddess.
Yes.
And what is rising again is the goddess. And we're getting back in touch with that part of us, with nature, which is also feminine, with the intuitive part, which is feminine, which is dark. Darkness represents the mother. And so many people are afraid of the dark or afraid of going within. When you're doing your work, your Scorpio work, you're actually going to that inner world, which is where you have to go to heal. And that is where the mother resides. You have to go to the mother to heal anything. And with Pisces and Saturn, that is, all of you guys, everybody is so spot on about the healing that has to occur. And it's really, we're really being taught or being drawn back to the Great Mother, because so many people don't even know who she is.
No, exactly.
I would love to add to that, and I love what you said, Marie, and everybody else before that. I think that one thing that I want to say is that Saturn is really, Saturn and Capricorn, it's yin and earth. So we often forget that because it's also about our conditioning, and because we live since centuries in hierarchical structures, we always think Capricorn and Saturn is about hierarchy, but actually Saturn is yin and earth. So it's this loving structures that holds us like a wise old, like a wise old being or a wise old woman. And additionally, I wanted to add that it's not in this chart, but I love to work with the goddesses, and at this time, so I looked it up with my software. At that time, Jupiter is conjunct Vesta, Astraea, and Diana.
Wow.
And everything you said, Marie, is so resonating with these goddesses, which are conjunct Jupiter and Chiron, and especially Diana. She's so much about coming back to our true nature, rewilding ourselves, and embracing ourselves as, Astraea and Diana are both virgin goddesses. So we have this, the Virgo full moon and the virgin goddesses with Jupiter. So they are actually about, they know that they hold unto themselves. So there is a very loving play between having boundaries, but knowing that we are all interconnected with nature. And even in nature, and that is such a natural Saturn image is always for me the tree. A tree that has its structure, but the tree is flexible, the wood is growing, it's connected, but it has its own boundaries. And so are we. So I think the Saturn and Pisces, especially when we look at this chart with the Eris energy, it's about remembering that our soul has chosen to be in a body on planet Earth. So that means we are in a body that is separate, but on a soul level, we are all connected. And I think this, and I'm super excited how this will play out on an individual and collective level. This play between having boundaries and having no boundaries, so to say. So there's unity consciousness, but knowing about healthy boundaries, Moon and Virgo, the asteroid goddesses that know that they are whole unto themselves. And in Eris, there is in the healing of the Eris energy, even with Chiron there, of a healthy way of setting boundaries. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, that's good. That's very good. I mean, and it's a matriarchal age that we're being prepared. It's as though it's preparing the ground for the matriarchal age of Aquarius, as that's trying to come in, you know, and Pisces, this Pisces age is still here. But we have to then reconnect with the true meaning of Pisces, and not the man-made part of Neptune, which is the disillusion and deceit and confusion and pretending to be false religions, you know, of using religion as a control mechanism, which is Saturn as well, which can be used as a control mechanism. I mean, Saturn is there's quincunx, the black moon there. So we have to redo Pisces before we're ready to move on to the matriarchal age of, and all that. I mean, that's also masculine, the Aries there. So we have to come to grips with that. There's a great deal of aggression. It's as though the patriarchy is holding on for dear life and not wanting to give way to the matriarchy. And so we are now getting this clash. And so that's where we are with the balance. And we're going to clash until
we balance it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's interesting. There's a program last night, very good, about Afghanistan, and the women there, you know, completely oppressed. And it was just so painful to watch. I mean, they have their hope has been taken away. Everything has been taken away. One of them was saying, we actually have been, they are trying to nullify us. They're trying to destroy everything that we are and give us no hope for the future. But there's a core of women who are sort of underground, insisting that they educate still and that they are forging towards a future that they can't see. They're in the fog, the Piscean fog, and they can't see a future. And this masculine energy is oppressing them, but they are holding out for this future, which sort of sums that up, I think.
Well, and what we also, to add to what you're saying, when we think about the feminine, for over 5,000 years, we have assumed that the feminine is weak, is the weaker part, when in fact, where the mother is concerned, both are equal, masculine and feminine. And what we are trying to do ultimately is balance the masculine and the feminine within ourselves. But we're having this battle, this war outward, this outward war, saying one is better than the other, and that is not true.
It's not just about men and women, as we know. It's about the male principle and the female principle. But that's encapsulated in Afghanistan, how the male principle is completely out of balance and has been, and it's though now it's got to an extreme, like the Middle Ages or something, the Dark Ages, and the oppression is has to go towards the feminine principle as well, the moon, you know.
We're being shown what is it, Pluto in Capricorn? Not that we're talking about that at this point. It's really been showing us our shadow and what we need to purify.
Yeah, and there
within
it is
ourselves.
At 29, not letting it right there. It's at 29 Capricorn, and of course it's going to slide back. It's going to give us a taste of Aquarius, and then slide back into Capricorn. So we're not done with Capricorn, and so the tussle is on, the fight is on. But then, as you say, it's the masculine principle is fighting with ego, but the feminine principle is just so surrender. You know, the Scorpio, the deep Scorpio principle. And the Piscean.
Yeah.
Just surrender
Well,
to it.
yeah, and you think about Capricorn. What is it? Capricorn is that place where you actually have to figure out which mountain you're going to climb.
Yeah.
Because you could climb the wrong mountain and get to the top and have fool's gold. So
Very good. Yeah. And wouldn't that be?
Yeah.
Bummer.
I know.
The wrong
Anyway,
mountain. Yeah. Very good. Very good. That's excellent. Everyone had such good things to say about that. So here we go. So Mars, Gemini square, Neptune in Pisces. And what's really interesting about this too, this is both planets coming out of their shadow period. So I think it was Mars that went retrograde in October, wasn't it? The end of October.
24th
Yeah,
of
so it was-
October, I think.
or the end of 24, nearly 25, yeah. So and Neptune did the same thing, I think, before. I haven't got the dates here, but they went about the same degrees, Pisces and Gemini, and now they're going both direct, going into it again. I think Neptune's direct, isn't it? Is it? I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's direct.
It is. So yes, so they're meeting their shadow and each other at the same time in this square. So that's quite something, I think. Does anyone want to go first with
Wow.
that?
Conjunct the sun too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and Mercury.
Mhm.
It's interesting to see it's another full moon. Oh,
Is
sorry,
it?
no, it's not.
Oh.
Moon Mars. It's the third quarter moon of that same cycle
Yeah.
you just
Yeah,
saw,
yeah.
right? Like Saturn's kind of fresh into Pisces here. I mean, there's a point that I meant to speak about in the last thing, but it's even more prevalent here. Notice also that it's Jupiter coming into semi-square Saturn.
Oh, right.
So when we look back
Mm.
to the seed that they planted on December solstice of 2020 in the first degree of Aquarius, right, in the 20-year great conjunction cycle of Jupiter and Saturn, this is like one of the places where typically it really heats up and gets stressful. So the thing I'm interested in this year and tracking is like all of these different so-called minor aspects between Jupiter and Saturn on their way to next year's squares. Because they
Yes.
they
Mhm.
novile before this, and then this is the octile, and there's a septile and a sextile, and they're in quintile forever, which feels like a blessing actually. But at this time, with Jupiter and Eris, like I feel like we already were hearing a lot of this spoken for in the last slide, and I feel like actually Jupiter was contributing a good amount of that. But thinking about how this like Aquarius intention for them together is going to find its way to like start sprouting somewhere underground, like breaking through the seed capsule, I think is an image from like the Rigurian world at this time of Jupiter semi-square Saturn. And I'd love to hear what anyone thinks about that, like how in a sense can like Aries Jupiter work with, or maybe feeling like against Pisces Saturn, like, but to serve this Aquarian intention. So it was really interesting to me because we're on like a very different topic in the last slide, but it felt like it kind of went into those spaces anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Mars square, I think you were doing something, Sue, weren't you, on Mars retrograde? What was it you did? It was a great class you did on it. Anyway, so, but Sue, I don't think she's listening. Okay.
No, I am listening. And
You were
it
listening.
was-
Sorry.
I'm
Yeah,
listening.
you did all that on. You did all that on Mars, didn't you? And
Yes,
so,
with the Mars retrograde that
Yeah.
correlated with the eclipses. And
Yes.
Mars retrogrades that correlated with previous Mars retrogrades on the same degree, with eclipses on the same degree in Scorpio and Taurus.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I noticed something too, because I was on your live cast about that, and I went and looked at it afterwards, because what you said was, God, what did you say about science or something, and about the imagination, and it was interesting because back in between 1812, I think you said those dates, 1812 to 1820, you had those dates. Sorry, it's wrong to spring it on you when you haven't got your stuff in front of you, but it's just
it was every 205 years. So
Right.
205 years ago from now. So 1817 was the
Right.
1800s one.
Which was fascinating about that, Mars then, when you said between 1812 and 1820, that's when electromagnetism was discovered. And it's actually the guy who, and I did a whole paper about it, but the guy who discovered it took from 1812 to 1820 to actually get it through and to prove it. And then it was taken over by someone else. They stole it off him, but he was a Dutch guy. I can't think of the name, but anyway, but it's fascinating because electromagnetism is the whole basis of what came after, you know, what we have now, which is everything, which is, you know, the atomic, the nuclear age, and communications. We said about communications, Mars and Gemini, and the internet, everything that we're based now. It really started with, that was a major breakthrough, probably the major one of this you know, that this period from there, 1812 to 1820. So here we are again, and we're getting it squaring and I think there was a square to Neptune then. And it's as though it's the intuition and the imagination connected through Gemini, Mercury to the sciences, and to the underlying, you know, Pisces, the ether, you know, the electricity and the magnetism and the ether. But it was a major breakthrough, and I just wonder if now we're sort of, in fact, lately they just said about discovering a parallel universe that's, you know, quantum mechanics and all that stuff. So it's as though we're going into a new phase of discovering a new layer of reality.
In that sense, if I'm sorry, Michaela, but just to add to what you were saying, in that sense, you know, we can roll back to Saturn and Pisces and say that the best apparition of Saturn and Pisces is our maturation and better understanding, more mature understanding of the universe, which is Pisces, of space, of reality.
Yeah, very good. Exactly. So yes, although we're facing some disillusionment with the structures that are breaking down, it's new structures that are coming up, like you were just saying, sprouting, you know. Yeah, exactly.
What I'm worried about is that as you were saying, they're both coming out of their shadows. The last time I think this is going to happen through, oh no, it's happening again through 2023, right? Or this is the last time it's happening again?
I don't think so. Does anyone know?
It's the last time. It's the last time, right?
Yeah,
and I think it's going to be the most powerful of all, because of these two planets springing out of their shadow. And Mars has been notorious with springing out of his shadow and creating havoc. and it's out of bounds as well, if we want to add to that. And whenever we're faced with that kind of stress, especially in a square, you know, we want to run away from reality. And this could induce in some of us some unhealthy, you know, tendencies to try and soothe reality in some way, whether it's, you know, by emotionally eating or buying something nice or drinking something or using a pill or something like that. But nevertheless, this is a very creative time that matches these two very creative planets, you know, in a very creative structure. You know, it's a Martial structure between them, and it's indeed a time that we could press, you know, things into reality, if you will, that come out of the ether, you know, that come out of our imagination and enthusiasm and conversing with the muses, if you will.
Well, that's
it. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Marie. Go ahead.
No, I was just looking at this and thinking, you know, I know that a lot of people don't meditate because they think that they have to sit quietly in a room and say Om or whatever, but that's just one way to meditate. You know, you can be creative. This is an extremely creative time when I think about the purpose of Neptune in Pisces and the purpose of Mars in Gemini. They each have their purpose when they come together. And in this particular case, Of course, it's a challenge because it's square. It just makes it hard, doesn't make it impossible. It means that you're not going to be able to sleep through the purpose like you could if it was a trine or a sextile. So you have to work at it. And in this case, if you have a vision, even if you don't have a vision, it's a good time to engage that Mars to
Yes.
figure out what the vision is and do some type of activity. I could see someone taking up yoga or running or whatever it is you want to do that could put you in the zone, because you need to be in that mental zone to actually hear through your being, through your body, what the vision is, or at least give you that next step on that vision. And it won't be easy, but you've still got, I mean, think about it. You've got Mars in Gemini, Gemini and Mercury in Pisces, conjunct the Sun, conjunct Neptune. That is quite powerful for having a vision.
Yes.
And we all need it in humanity, but this is a good time to do it, to go out in the woods, go for hikes, you know, go talk to the homeless, you know, use that Mars energy and have it work with the Neptune, the Sun, and Mercury. And you know, we talked about history and what was going on in the past, but we still have to look at the other planets, the configuration of the other planets with this particular aspect. And of course, Pluto was in a different place, and Neptune, and so was Uranus in a different place. So we have to bring those in too.
Yeah, exactly.
And I have the feeling, and I'm completely resonating with what you said, Marie, because I had the feeling when I looked at the chart and I saw, okay, we have the moon at that time in Sagittarius, opposing Mars in a trine to Jupiter and Venus and Eris. Then, as you already mentioned, the ruler of Gemini, shortly before its Cazimi, so the halfway point of the Mercury cycle. And I had this feeling that, I mean, it's the third of these Mars square Neptune. So we already had two. And how I experienced them, it was very much about the confusion of the personal will versus a higher truth, or what is my true path? Are my ideas, Gemini, my fixed ideas, my fixed plans, really in alignment with my true path, with my soul's path? And now at the third square, when Neptune and Mars are direct again, and the moon is in this intuitive energy of Sagittarius, and Mercury in conjunction with the Sun, I have the feeling that there is something about, especially now, because now Jupiter's in Eris. During the first two squares, Jupiter was still in Pisces. So I have the feeling now we maybe feel intuitively stronger and can align, even though it's a square, but I think there is the potential to align more and more what we are, our actions with our intuition and the deep felt getting new visions that are really in alignment.
Exactly. Yeah. Very good. I mean, the Sun, conjunct Neptune and Mercury there too. I mean, it's very powerful. And Mars has to deflect the ego in order to conjoin with it. Not fight it.
And in a way pierce through the illusion as well, you know.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's it, isn't it? I mean, so the ritual is important, the discipline of Saturn in Pisces. So discipline, ritual, meditation, not just escapism, which will get us. Yeah, exactly.
We're getting a lot of escapism right now.
Yes, well, I mean, yeah, with all this
And we
pressure.
will. That's something that we
Yeah.
will get with such a
Yeah.
Piscean energy in the skies.
Yeah.
And you know,
Yeah.
the moon T-squaring here, I mean, this is a T-square between the moon, Mars, and Mercury, the sun, and Neptune, right? So the moon in Sagittarius plays a part as well, you know.
Yes, of
Let's
course.
run away somewhere.
There'll be new,
Go on vacation.
there'll be new innovative places to run away to. I mean, I
Or
think
connected
that's
with inner.
a huge piece of this, like the metaverse, you know. I mean, even social media to one extent, but the dream of that place, if you don't read the fine lines, right, and nobody does at all, like the control systems there. So I love, Varena, that you brought in the that this is the third Mars Neptune square, and Ryan, that you brought in the out of bounds nature. Like in the first one, Mars is actually just on the way out of bounds, and in a really strong trine with Aquarius Saturn at the time. And the second one was shortly after Mars had stationed retrograde and trine Saturn, but now out of bounds. And you know, there's something, and out of bounds, this which can be kind of wild and Martian. It can also be very Neptunian. You know, it's like these planets going to places that the sun like can't even dream to go. They're like at this time the sun's super close to the equator, so is Neptune, and Mars is like well north of the Tropic of Cancer. Like that's impossible for the sun. The moon here is even more out of bounds than Mars in the other direction. So there's
It's like, I just give up, you know, I just give up on that guy. I let him do whatever he wants to do. I just give up.
Yeah, or like I give up trying to solve this in the old way and in the old world, and we need new visions, and we need some like courage to go beyond, you know. I mean, I'm interested in the Sagittarius Gemini axis, like that the moon comes in here to make us understand, like, you know, every sign is one side of a pole, and there's something here about truth. And, you know, that's a huge piece of this Mars retrograde period in Gemini, what's going on. It's really interesting to see it activated here, because some of the ways that we just get lost in the delusional space, and some of that is very much encouraged, you know, by the powers that shouldn't be. And I think a lot of the things that are coming to light right now about, you know, how involved the government has been in restrictions in social media spaces should be, you know, like I feel I've been saying for some time, like censorship should be the prime red alert territory for us right now. And that's like, it's important for us to remember not to go to sleep. And I love the quote I've been hearing a lot, like, you know, 1984 was a warning, not an instruction manual. And so it's important for us to kind of awaken to some of the way that like the tools have been used to keep us asleep. The other thing I'm wondering about, I don't know if it's in this chart, it's in a lot of charts for the years ahead. Like, I think, was that in our thread that this was shared, but like, you know, like artificial wombs and like the factory baby thing that's coming in. Because there's some of this like Taurinus in combo with the Neptune Pisces nightmare. There's also some of the cool dreams. Like there was a huge advent towards a free energy happening yesterday. So that's saying too much, but those are all things I've been excited to hear the panel kind of address topically as we move through these charts today.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about perspective, isn't it? I mean, yeah, we're adjusting our perspective, but what's truth and what's fake?
Look, in order for things to be torn down, we need some new paradigms to be put in place. You know, we need some new realizations. When Hubble was put in place, we could finally see the universe. You know, now James Webb is up there, you know, showing us the universe again. We're learning in fast steps, you know, and
but first we have to
faster
imagine
and faster.
We have to imagine the new paradigm before we can create it. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Sometimes it just pushes down upon us, you know. Sometimes we're just faced with it, you know. Like imagine, you know, if one day the universe would think we're mature enough to actually, you know, that aliens would come and actually say, hey, we're here, we think we're that you were evolved enough that you would not get in hysteria, you know, once we know that. And yeah, you know, you're not the only living creatures around with, you know, a bit of intelligence in there.
Awesome,
That would be
Neil.
nice,
I'm with you on that
that's
one.
definitely a tearing down of the old reality and the beginning of a new.
Although that could be applicable. I always consider with aspects the planet. And when I think of perfect Mars and Neptune in blend, we have the archetype of the spiritual warrior. And that first quarter square is always the testing of that intention. So here's Mars in Gemini square Neptune in Pisces, with a core intention of being the quote spiritual warrior and all that we can imagine that means. And here we are being tested in our spiritual warriorship. So in mundane astrology, what could possibly encourage us to, what could possibly test us as spiritual warriors? You know, discuss.
Excellent.
And how that applies to each of our lives, you know, may be individual and it may be collective. And so regardless, though, appropriate steps towards that.
Yep. And
Great.
Ryan, you know that, well, we all know this, that, you know, we are so hard on ourselves. We want ultimately, over the long haul, get it wrong, because what we do is we make progress. And as long as we make progress and we have that intention and we keep moving, and so we eventually evolve.
Yes.
Every, you know, every little step, we just evolve. We don't have to have this all right all at once. Neptune
No, I know
square,
it.
yeah,
Exactly. We cannot know something, just
Right.
be assured that we will be shown and we'll know that there is a force higher than you know that is guiding us as well. Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly. Very good, very good. I mean, that's, yeah, I think we got a lot out of that. That's excellent. Let's go on. Oh, well, we're not going to discuss this, but obviously that's there for people's reference because the big ingress of Pluto, although this is the first time, isn't it? So it will be leaving again, but we're going to get a taste of it. So quite shortly after that, that aspect, that transit between Mars and you know, Neptune. So that's interesting because they must be tied somehow. But it is maybe a taste of the Aquarian age, the matriarchy and everything, a spiritual. Yeah, maybe the aliens do. Hey. Well, we'll let panel 3 take care. Or panel 1, did they already take care of that? I don't know.
Yeah, they
You know,
they talked about Pluto and Aquarius a lot.
Yeah, did they? Yeah. Well, we think the aliens. Did they get there to aliens?
No,
the
go
change
ahead.
of power, transformation
Go
of
ahead.
power, you know, if we're talking about
Yeah,
the
yeah.
transformation of power and the earthquake kind of energy, atomic kind of energy that this symbolism can induce.
Mhm.
And I've been looking, you know, at the eclipses through 2023, and I've been looking at especially the ones at the end of 2023, the two at the end. And
Yeah.
I've been looking at these transits that we were talking about in the last slide, and this one, and Vladimir's Putin birth chart, you know, and he's getting some hits. I mean, these stationary Mars. I mean, this his moon is the 26th degree of Sagittarius, just across from that Mars, you know, with Neptune and the Sun T-squaring. And then he has two eclipses, one on his ascendant, on his Neptune, and one on his descendant, across from his Neptune at the end. So
Yeah.
putting this in perspective, this could be a year that would, go to different places. It could be something that we're restructuring, and it could be something that I don't want to even go there, with my mind. I don't want to think what could happen between the West and the East, between the United States going through its Pluto return, and the East, North Korea, Iran, China, and Russia,
all
with
up
all
in
of
the
this
air.
happening.
It's like, wow, it's just.
And if we
all-
look at this 30s, the beginning of the 30s, leading up to 39, to September 39,
Yeah.
a lot of similarities there in the sky.
Yes, exactly. That was one of the things I actually was going to say, and I did write in my introduction that I skipped a little bit about that. But what I basically said was that we've just had in October, we had the Venus star, and I'm going to be talking about, and we can talk about the Venus star at the end, because that's the last transit we're talking about. But the one in October was at 29 Libra, which you brought up, Sue, that hasn't happened since 1771. And so I went deeper into that to try and get some, fix on this, that's the Venus star that's coming up in August. And so to include, because obviously it's all part of the cycle. And I'll put that up at the end, as I say, so we can see it. But there is a connection here with the eclipses, because it does seem that that happened in 1771. It was 29 Libra, and before 93 years before that, you got opposite. You got 29 Eris. So I think it was, I've got it in my notes. I think it was an inferior conjunction. Anyway, never mind. I'll get to that at the end. But it was 29 Aries. So that happened 93. Now, this time, we've had the same thing happen this century as happened in the 18th century. So you had 1771, and 93 years before that, you had the 29 degrees Aries, directly opposite. We actually had the 29 Aries Venus star in, I think it's inferior conjunction, but it was in 1929. So April 20th, 1929. So it actually started that period that you were just talking about, Nia, and about the 30s. So it's the Depression, and then the 1930s, and that lead up. Well, and it's as though they're like bookends, 29 degrees Aries and 29 degrees Libra just now. And it's like we've bookended 93 years, just like back in the 18th century, that all led up to the revolution, the American Revolution. And so we're getting that. We just ended that period. We bookended it, and then now we get the eclipse, and they got the same pattern exactly back then. So it's that revolutionary period, and that one's over. But we're sort of we're in a new phase from 1929 to 2022, and now we've just started this phase of it, and we get the eclipses just the same as they did then. They got eclipses around the same time. So it's very interesting. And actually, after 1929, the eclipse that there was in 1939 with this set of eclipses. So coming up, we had in the metodic cycle, we had solar eclipse on the 20th of April, and then we had the same as here, around the 5th of, it was the 5th of May. We had the lunar eclipse in Scorpio, and then we had the other eclipses that you talked about, Nia at the end, which is like 4 degrees Taurus, is it 5 degrees Taurus, lunar eclipse, and
Yeah, I'll let you know
21
exactly.
Libra, I think, solar eclipse. Yeah.
Yeah,
So we've had the
there's-
same set of eclipses after the bookends of the Venus stars, which is all mirroring the period of the American leading up to the American Revolution. And yeah, so it's extraordinary. So does anyone want to just say anything else about these eclipses?
You know, as we know, with America, as with most countries, we all have our shadow, and the country itself is dealing with its shadow. The things that were on the table back then, and we've seen some shifts, but this is just, you know, when you think about an iceberg in our shadow, we're only seeing a small part of it. Most of it is underwater, really. But it's
You know,
we're
it's
getting
really good you just said that, because that's another thing. This in the Botanic cycle, this set of eclipses was the year of the Titanic too, and actually the Titanic went down on the solar eclipse.
Iceberg.
Iceberg! Didn't you say that, Nia, before?
I did. That's why it's so funny the second time.
And it was as though it was a harbinger, a portent of the First World War, but it was also a portent of the Second World War, because that's when the eclipse returned. So quite amazing. And here we go again, and we're in a war situation. And so we've got the American Revolution, Second World War, First World War, Titanic. What else is there? Oh, the Cuban Missile Crisis comes in.
Oh, thank you. So the question becomes, what do we look at history to inform us? Do we use the Mars in Gemini and the from the last chart that we just looked at, the Neptune, the Sun, and Gemini? And I'm sorry, Mercury. Do we use that? Do we look at the past, and do we envision what we want for the future that is different, so that we can respond? Because this is about how we respond to the situations that arise now. What do we do? I mean, we can repeat, because we've repeated, but it seems as though we are responding differently. So that's what it seems. I mean, when I think about what we're doing with Ukraine as America, when what is right action in every moment? That's what it's about. What is our intention? Because honestly, it is our intention that creates the karma, whether it's good or whether it's not so good.
Yes.
So what do we
re-envision exactly the future? Because we seem the future we envisioned before, but we had, as you said, some of you were saying, we've made a lot of progress. We mustn't put ourselves down, because although it feels like we sort of, at the moment, we're probably feeling like, what have we done? We thought we'd made a lot of progress, and now everything's falling apart. But it's not true, really.
No.
It's like we have made a lot of progress. It's just that on one hand, it's falling apart. But on the other hand, we must latch onto that progress and think, okay, how can we are just being shown by the things that fall apart, as you say, we're being shown, okay, this is part of these are the consequences, these are part of the mistakes we've made before. Are we going to repeat those same patterns, or are we going to change? Right. And so with our new consciousness that we do have, we have to go the path of re-envisioning.
Right. We do. Good. And I see a lot of people shifting. I mean, think about so Britain, look at what the new Prince and Princess of Wales, the award that they just gave. I mean, that's revolutionary.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah, exactly. So there are, and that's such an entrenched institution. Until Diana came along, it was so entrenched.
And now we have Markle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Again,
that was another right.
Another shake.
Yeah, it's a shakeup. So it's a different way of having a revolution. And here in America, why did we have the revolution in the first place?
Right, right. Because the
Mhm.
structure was oppressive and it wasn't,
Mhm.
yeah, exactly. It wasn't the future that was envisioned.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
what did we do with it? Of course, we were the product of
Yeah.
what we were fighting against. So
That does happen, doesn't it? We grow into our parents. Don't
Oh.
we?
darn.
We start out with all these grand ideas and then we end up with
Goddess forbid. Goddess forbid.
The thing I love about evolution is that we don't have to repeat the past. Just
Mhm.
because it smells like it doesn't mean we have to do it. So what are we talking about? Pre-discovery of Uranus here? And so
Yeah.
back then they didn't have the Uranus function. They didn't have Pluto.
They didn't have
They didn't
Pluto.
have Chiron. They didn't have Eris.
Right.
We now have the ability to use our Pluto function and say, is that just my ancient wound percolating up here, or is there something really substantial there? We didn't necessarily have that. Now we do.
Or both, or both.
Or
And so-
both.
And so now, right.
Yeah, very
And
good
so
point.
now my hope is that, just like psychologist Fritz Perls said, consciousness is curative. My hope is that we have a little bit more consciousness now of our shadow tendencies in order to hopefully inject some more maturity and wisdom and health and all that other fun stuff into what looks like it could be a repeat of past patterns. Does that make
That's
sense?
really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. You say
Very
that
nice.
too.
Very
because,
nice.
You know, the solar eclipse is squaring Pluto, of course, there.
Exactly.
And yeah, and there's Pluto actually in Aquarius. So it's showing us where we need to go to, like you just said. But it will go back, of course, to square the nodes. It will have another go at Capricorn, but it's showing us in that solar eclipse, this is where you need to go on to the future. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
It
And
is.
in both of them, we have a nice square between Chiron and Mars in both eclipses. So we
Yeah.
could still feel the pain, you know.
Yes.
Yes.
And
This
and
is
I think
true.
I think it's important to see these eclipses in relation to the eclipses we had 2022. So because I think that for me, when I looked at the Eris solar eclipse, it looked for me like a moment of initiation. So the moon is balsamic to the North Node in Taurus. So we have done 2022, all of these on an individual level, these deep healing and purging processes. So we became aware of so many fears and of deep trauma that is still stuck in our psyche from lifetimes. I'm saying that as an evolutionary astrologer. So, and I think now the solar eclipse can be this, especially with Pluto direct at the lunar eclipse, it turned retrograde, but solar eclipse direct Pluto squaring the nodes, moon balsamic to the North Node in Taurus to really have a new vision, to really I had this image came into my mind that especially with these eclipses in fall, winter 2022, it felt like we prepared the ground and the soil, and we clarified and purged our soil and soul. And with this Aries solar eclipse, I have the feeling that the sprout is coming out of this ground. And with the lunar eclipse, there might be some growing pain. So there might be some old fears that are arising again, the moon in Scorpio, and Pluto then retrograde. But I think that this is on an individual level, the solar eclipse can be a moment of, wow, okay, here I want to go. And okay, I have to maybe face some fears still, but that's the way, and that are my values, and I'm stepping forward in the directions of my values and coming to a close, moon balsamic to the North Node in Taurus, maybe with some old limiting beliefs or some old trauma that I have purged and healed
Yeah.
over the last months.
Yeah, it is collective and individual trauma, isn't it? And it's like we have been working, it's a process. We've been working through that. And it's odd. Phases of very great pain just coming out of nowhere. I don't know, I think a lot of us have been getting that, not just individually. I think it's from the collective as well. And it's the two-way process. But yes, from, as you just said, from past lives even. I mean, there's a hell of a lot to work through. And it's a whole, and it is, as we are transitioning into a new age, very slowly, but we're Titanic in the mists at the moment. The fog, the miasma over the iceberg. And hopefully we could avoid that iceberg now if our consciousness hopefully could raise. It does seem it is raising. So, but we do have to acknowledge the grief. As you said at the start, I think, who was it that said that about acknowledging the grief? That was very good. Nia, was it? And I
guess.
think so we just have to keep that moving though, and keep on moving through it, because that's going to happen, obviously.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
We acknowledge the grief, but we also do the scorpionic work of letting go.
Yes. Yeah, which is again that south node. Before that moves on, that we've got to do that. We've got to do that work.
We have to let go of that pain, because if we don't, we take it with us.
Yeah, we can't take it with us. We have to transform.
The south node is the resolution node for the Pluto square. So we have to go deep down and in so that we can rise to new horizons and ways to live. So
So it's interesting because you said about Uranus, but I mean, Uranus was discovered in 1781, so it's right after the American Revolution. So it was though it was on the threshold when that happened, and we were sort of acting out Uranus so that we didn't know it yet. America was already at the head of the collective. Really, it was right there with the democracy and everything. That it was sort of taken over and leading the way in that. Uranus was already there. Interesting, when Uranus was discovered in 1781, that was actually the first balloon flight, which I thought was wonderful. So it describes Uranus as though we took off for the first time. And that was directly after the American independence. So interesting. Yeah. So now Uranus has really done the shovel work here, and it still is, and it's tough, you could say, but it is part of its necessity. It's digging all of the dirt up, so to speak. past dirt of the last 2,000 years. So that's a lot of dirt.
Oh, it sure is. And what is it? In one of the Rinpoches I was listening to was talking about dirt and our, in cleaning and how we clean our dirt and on ourselves. And he was saying, okay, so you get in the shower, you've been out hiking, you've got all this dirt, it's caked on. Maybe you haven't had a shower in a year. Let's just say you were out in the wilderness and you haven't had a shower, you got all this dirt, you get in the shower, you start scrubbing, it starts hurting because it's so caked on. But do you stop, or do you continue to keep scrubbing to get your skin clean? And of course, we want to keep scrubbing. Sometimes you might have to just maybe not scrub and just stand under the shower, let your skin soak a little bit. But you still have the intention of cleaning yourself.
Exactly.
That's the whole
Whatever way
point.
you do it. Exactly. Yeah, that's good. I like that. Yes.
Has anyone here ever actually experienced being composted?
You have, right?
Lord knows I do it once a month, let alone every Scorpio season.
Please share, Ryan. Please share.
As a farmer of
We want the
28
details.
years,
I want the gory details.
as a farmer of 28 years, you have to jump into the cesspool and allow worms to devour you and poop you out.
Ew.
There is There's nothing clean about it. There's nothing nice about it. There's nothing gentle about it. One has to completely submit the entirety of their being to the transformative process of allowing a meat hook to be stuck in their back and lowered over the coals of hell, slow roasting so that their skin drips and sizzles onto the coals, so that there's absolutely nothing left of you except the impenetrable diamond-like core of one's heart that cannot be punctured by that meat hook. When the rest of you has dissolved completely, that diamond falls into the ash heap, which is the seed of the phoenix rebirth. And so there is no getting out of the Scorpio process in some kind of shiny, oh, I just used dial. That's how no. No. There must be a complete and total obliteration of everything that was before if it is going to be broken down and mixed with the worm poop and humic acids in order to be that delicious fertilizer for Taurus next year.
And this is how you get pregnant.
That's funny.
No, I'm thinking, I mean, Katerina actually put a note in the chat, which is so true, about the menstrual cycle every month.
Sure.
You know, if you don't get pregnant, then you have to shed that. And let me tell you, that process can be painful.
Scorpio, that process. Yeah.
It is, and it can be painful. Let me tell you.
Yes, yes, definitely.
That's deep. That's an amazing
it is,
portrayal.
actually. That is a very good analogy, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, exactly. And the growth, the fertility comes out of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great. So, okay. So I think we'll just get out of this bath. Look forward to that. Something. Okay. Next. Okay. So lighten up, guys.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, dear. So I'll just say something quickly because I've got that Cuban Missile Crisis thing on there, but it's because it's the same. It's the bendings, and I did mention that last year when we were going into everything with the, you know, the nucleus theory theme coming up again. And so we were approaching, you know, the bendings of the same as now we are actually approaching the same position as at the Cuban Missile Crisis, which started on the 14th of October, 1962. And so the nodes will be at the same place, although they are, I think they're opposite. They were Leo, Aquarius Leo, and this time, of course, they're Taurus, Scorpio Taurus. But they are at the same degree. They're going to be at the same degree. And so it's sort of coming into focus again. And this, what's interesting about this Mars, obviously Mars, Pluto, Jupiter nodes, as they come into focus, we've got this grand cross with Mars at 0 degrees Leo and opposite Pluto at 0 degrees Aquarius. And it's all making the grand cross with the nodes and then Jupiter sort of hitting it all off, which, so it's as though the same theme is coming up, but you know, but it's a little concerning because in the Cuban Missile Crisis, what happened was, I think I do put up the chart of the end of it. Saturn was in play then. It was at 4 or 5 degrees Aquarius, so it did hit the south node at the end, and it was as though the brakes went on. So, and that was the end of the crisis. Here we don't get Saturn there. So it'd be interesting to know what everyone thinks of it. I mean, we do get Jupiter, which is not to say, you know, anything terrible happens, but it looks like the theme may come back again. And this time you haven't got the Saturnian breaks, but you have got Pluto, which is interesting. And I wondered what everyone thought of that. Yeah.
I think interesting is an interesting description
Yes.
for Pluto.
Oh, it is.
Yes.
I mean, you're saying all of this, and that, I don't know. I think about Russia. I mean,
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
that's
Yeah.
what comes to mind when you know,
Yeah.
with what you're saying and
The
what I
threat
see.
of use of nuclear power,
Yeah.
the threat of use of nuclear annihilation, the
Mhm.
old fear that we thought was buried for good arises again. That
Mhm.
old foul, that arch nemesis of humanity, is here to have its final act, if you will. And
Yeah.
we are here to prove Albert Einstein wrong. There would not be a fourth world war in which we would be throwing sticks and stones over each other. Indeed, this is a time to end all wars and become one.
Right.
But it's going to get worse before it gets better, honey.
Yeah.
It's like,
I
if we
think
want to
that,
be real, if we want to keep it real,
yeah, but I
it's
think I
Yes.
think especially Mars and Leo. I mean, and Mars and Leo will be with conjunct Pallas Athena. She's in Leo at that time, and I think there is the possibility of new creative solutions. So Pallas Athena in Leo, she's the seer. She is the strategist. She is a warrior goddess too, but she goes into war for peace. So she has the vision in her third eye. And I think especially in Leo, it's about finding new creative solutions to serve humanity, Pluto and Aquarius. And I think there is a huge potential to overcome the past and to really use this. And for me, Pallas Athena, from the energy, especially when she's together with Mars and Leo, there is, and the sun is the ruler of Leo, is in Taurus. There is this well-balanced feminine masculine principle within that. So it's strong, but it's from the heart, Leo.
three things I want to say before I leave. Okay. First of all, Varena, I really hope that your Jupiterian enthusiasm will prove us all wrong. All us, pessimists wrong. Amen. May I wish that we have learned the lesson, but coming from a territory on Earth where I constantly see how they're not learning the lesson, I'm reality stricken. And in that sense, what you were saying about Pallas Athena, she's also in charge about wake-up calls. She's the first one to see. She's the first one to see the route out, and the strategy that needs to be taken. But she wakes up the rest, and that waking up process, we're in the midst of it right now. And I want to refer to something Michaela said before about, the matriarchy taking the rule again. And in a way, it is women, that need to take away the power from patriarchy and strip it down in a sense. But what I think the age of Aquarius talks about is the age of being human.
Yeah.
Regardless of your gender, just being good human beings, And maybe in the future, maybe in the future it would be kind of rude asking somebody what's their pronouns, What do you mean? It's like asking if you're coming from an Hispanic family or an Italian family, it's none of your business, As long as you refer to me, that's good enough for me, And
Like you said, it's not about men and women. Basically, it's the male principle and the female principle that this is out of kilter, out of balance, and needs rebalance.
It's about balance. It's about balancing out and understanding it's not about being good men or women, but just being good human beings.
In the center.
It's I like that you said that, Nia, because a few months ago I had a vision, and it was about, and I was shown this vision actually over and over again by being sent double yolk eggs. And I know we know how rare it is to get double yolk eggs. Well, I ended up with a whole carton of them. And when I And this is where we are headed, to know that. And also to know that with Taurus, Taurus the bull, it has the third eye. And the saying, or one of its mantras, is when the eye is opened, all is illumined. It is all light. And this is also where we are headed. But we have to get there through Scorpio, through doing that deep work, through it seems as though, because our planet is we've got so much pain. It's what is it? Harmony through conflict is really what our planet is about. And it's unfortunate, but yet the big picture is we evolve faster because we go through the conflict. If we are in the God realm, then we have no conflict. It takes us longer to evolve. So we're here on this earth plane. We all chose to be here because we want to evolve. And we are further along than we think we are, even though we are in such a painful state. It's all in how. Anyway, I'll shut up. It's just.
No, it's very good. I mean, it's like, yes, we had the Second World War, and the bomb and everything was developed then, and everything, and we thought, as you said, we thought we'd sort of buried that, and let's just ignore that, and that'll just stay away. But now it's hitting us in the face. But then it had to, because it is our shadow, as you're saying, it's the shadow we have to confront. It couldn't just lie there. It was always going to come back. But we are facing it with a new consciousness that we didn't have back then. I think we realize now that the Nazis, it wasn't just Germany at fault, that Germany was expressing, as every nation does, the shadow of the world.
Right.
Not just that nation. It just erupts there. But it's for the collective.
It is.
And I think we are realizing now that we didn't realize then, and haven't realized probably till quite recently, that the shadow is a shadow. Well, people like Jung did, but the shadow is collective, and it just will always keep erupting if we do not shed light on it and we're not conscious of it and accept it in ourselves, and all take responsibility for it.
Right.
Instead of pointing a finger at each other and
right,
saying,
which is
they're the bad guys.
Yeah. I mean, and we were, so many people were appalled with who we had as president for 4 years. And yet I say he had to be president because we had to have someone that put it in our face in a way that we could not avoid. And look, and even with Putin, we have to have Putins.
Yeah, it had to happen. And it was always going to happen.
You were talking before, I don't remember who talked about it before, but before somebody mentioned that a lot of the time, at times of uncertainty, when we cannot see, when we get too Neptunian, too foggy, and we can't see the way, and the structures that we try to hold on to are tearing down, what happens is a regression. We need somebody strong. We need somebody patriarchal to give us the old safety that we're actually feeling running away through our fingers, slipping away through our fingers. Yeah. And we can see many regimes around the world choosing a Putin, choosing a Trump, choosing a Netanyahu.
So it's feeling, as you say, it's running
in Brazil as well.
Reaction. Yeah.
Exactly. And we all have that choice between love and fear, between running back, fearful of the future, or believing in that new sprouting nucleus.
Yes.
Yes.
And it all starts with every individual soul. So
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, we're all doing this work.
Yeah.
And I want to roll back to what Ryan was saying of simple Thanksgiving. Simple Thanksgiving, just using that as the greatest tool one has against this depression, against this frustration, against the emptiness and the void and darkness.
Mhm.
The simple thanksgiving of being allowed to breathe in that moment and be a part of this mass change.
Mhm.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And realizing we do have the power, as you said, Varena, just now, it's in every individual that realizes they have the power to say no to that, to say, no, that is not going to happen. And this is the way it's going to be, and to reimagine. And every individual needs to trust that and know it and believe it. And it will turn around. And yeah, it's as though it has to be presented as this is a possibility for us to say no to it. We have to say no.
Yeah, and I think especially, I mean, this goes more into the Pluto in Aquarius, and I know they talked yesterday about that, but in Aquarius we have long-term memory, so trauma as well. And I think one topic with Pluto in Aquarius will be the purging and healing of deep trauma in every individual soul, because when I look in the world and in politics, so many people are just acting out of their repressed fears and trauma and are in a fight flight, mostly fight response. And I think there is so much what we can do, because as Marie said, we are here for that. And everybody who watches this panel, I think everybody can really become very self-honest Scorpio and do the inner work. I mean, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, because if we change just 1% of who we are, we change the world.
Yes. Yeah.
It doesn't take much.
Yeah. And each of us has to know that we do have the power to do it. We're not powerless. I think, I mean, a lot of us are feeling the disempowerment now. But the truth is, the power is not in the material world. The power is in the unseen, in the universe, the spiritual.
Oh, it is. That is where, we create from that.
Yes,
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Good. Great. Okay. So that's not going to happen. So forget. Did that.
We have spoken.
But yeah, so all of that is, you know, the superior conjunction that yeah, is that where we're at, the superior conjunction already? Wow, I don't know. Are we?
We've got 3 charts up.
Okay, so that's again, that's about the Cuban Missile Crisis, and that's the end of it. So that's for everyone's reference. And then you can't see them very well, but okay, we can't see that, but never mind. So the Venus superior conjunction in Leo, which is happening this year at the bottom, 2022, and I think I've got the whole. I think I've got the whole chart for that on here. No, okay, never mind. We'll go to this first then, because I knew that was the last chart. So I just put that so that there I could, I put that there because that is square. There was actually a Venus superior conjunction, I think, in Scorpio then at 20 degrees Scorpio. So like the nodes are square, so are the Venus stars. So we're getting the 20 degrees Leo Venus star this year in August, and then in November 12th, when the Cuban Missile Crisis was going on. So it just happened like 2 weeks after the 12th of November was the Venus conjunction at 20 degrees Scorpio. So again, square again. Interesting. Yeah. So it's like a mirroring thing going on. So anyway, this is the nodal axis ingress into Aries Libra. So obviously that's a big change. We go from Scorpio, from Taurus, Scorpio Taurus to Libra Aries. So yeah, I mean we'll go on to the square with Pluto, I think, and about that. Yeah. So that's when the nodes, they square Pluto just after they enter Libra Aries. So yes, so anyone want to lead on that one?
Well, we thought we'd be able to
iceberg.
It's
still there.
It's still there. We didn't steer clear of it, did we?
And I think that's an awesome perception, because when we really think about it, what do we not want to look at? We don't want there to be icebergs. We want everything to be nice, right? We want every South Node in Libra. Let's just spray paint it sparkly and put it on a wreath. You know, and that's not.
Exactly, very powerful. And also, of course, there's the sun. I should have put that. It's actually not just a T-square, it's a grand cross. There's the sun at 29, 30, actually 30 degrees, isn't it? Cancer, down below.
It's a
Oh my
grand
God.
cross. The moon
Yeah,
opposes Neptune and Saturn
Yes.
opposes Mars.
The super
Oh,
out of
this is so
bounds
good.
new moon, like just days before, is probably when I think that will most shine. Another semi-square as well, this time Saturn and Pluto.
Right.
Oh,
How does that
lovely.
gel with it, the semi-square, do you think?
Oh, wait, my bad. I'm doing bad math again. Should have slept last night. That one is not a semi-square. Michaela, these are already, they're already in their presentation. It wouldn't be easy to go to that new moon.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we
Yeah.
can do it in our
Do you want
heads.
to do that or after? Yeah. Do you want to do that? You don't want to put your presentation, yeah.
No, it's all right.
Okay.
I can rewind them a few days.
Yeah. Or you could maybe put it on at the end very quickly or something.
So this is a really interesting beginning to this nodal passage through these
Yeah, it
signs,
is.
obviously.
Very,
It's
really
interesting that Pluto like returns from dipping the toe into the Aquarian realms
Yeah.
to make this date cardinal.
Wow.
And I love that, we're moving into these lunar standstill times where the moon goes most out of bounds. So the conjunction just before this, the Cancer new moon, is like the furthest thing from a conjunction that's possible, or almost, in moon sun time. There's something that's really like shaking us up and asking us to come, I think, in some ways out of the cardinality of the square. I think those late anaretic degrees are really interesting too, but it's cool to see everybody moving retrograde except for the sun and the moon. But the vision that kept coming through for me is it's kind of, there's like a Romeo and Juliet thing where, you needing to release the need for approval from the elders and whatnot and go your own way and follow your love and be in a place of your own heart, and then you can bring folks along with you. I hesitate to say that because I want to honor like the beauty of elders and tradition and all these things, but breaking broken rules can be the right thing to do.
Yeah,
And
it's not
we
gonna be
have a lot of opportunity to move in ways that aren't necessarily being honored or seen by those around us. But I think you might start asking some questions about, what is this astrology thing you're into or whatnot? And I don't know, that's not usually the kind of talk that I find my way to when I'm looking at really strong cardinals like this. But that's been my sense of the opportunities of this Grand Cross.
Yeah, that's very good. It's and it's so intense, isn't it, at the Antarctic?
Oh, it is. When I look at this, what I see is what does authentic personal power look like for each individual? And it's different for each individual. And I do see this as calling us out in stepping into that as much as we can. And when I think about authentic personal power, that doesn't mean you have to fight. it means you stand.
Yeah, that's excellent. See, you've done it again. You just got, yeah, the iceberg thing. You know, it's like just came into my mind. If Titanic had actually faced the iceberg like Pluto is faced there head on, it would not have sunk because it would have gone straight into it. It just needed to let go of the steering. Don't try and do anything. Just go into it. And it would have survived. It would not have sunk. But because it desperately at the last minute tried to steer it, it actually opened the side like a can opener.
See, I didn't know that. That's good information.
They thought they'd missed it, but actually it was all underneath, of course. You know.
That's right.
Yeah. So it's like here we need to just let it, you know, you see it. So okay, we just got to go with this, and we won't sink. We hit it, and we'll stop. But then we can, you know, re-navigate ourselves. Yeah.
And this is hard because it's a nice square. I mean, it's a cardinal cross.
What is interesting is that Mars, the ruler of the North Node, is at that time in Virgo, and Venus, the ruler of the South Node, is at that time in Leo conjunct Mercury. So what Gemini Brett said, I think I really feel that this with Venus in Leo as the ruler of the South Node in Libra, there is something around letting go of these need to be seen by others. So really letting go of codependency so that we can step into our own very healthy individuation process. And with Mars in a yin sign at that moment. So it's not about running and fighting and doing all the shadowy Aries thing. It's more about, going forward with discernment, but really coming to what is necessary, what is useful, what is in service for us and for others.
A necessary barrier that actually stops you from going over the edge, sort of thing. So it's like Pluto is the barrier. Then it's saying, okay, stop here. It stops.
But creating the new and. Capricorn, Pluto retrograde. So we have unfinished business there. So there are still things that are keeping us away from really going forward in the direction of our
But we have to come to a stop first before we can stop where we're heading.
Right.
Venus is like preparing for her next cycle here, but she's still in a cycle that, you know, was for the interior conjunction in Capricorn in January of 2022, and then the exterior in Libra, as you were mentioning, the first in 1771. And so I think of that as a Capricorn Libra cycle, and to see Pluto, who we know Venus stationed retrograde with before that cycle began, right at the end of 2021 in retrograde, the node in retrograde at that degree where we've had our first Venus Cazimi in Libra. Importantly, an exterior Venus conjunction, we won't have an interior conjunction there for another 16 years. And there's a resonance there with the Revolutionary War that you mentioned, Michaela, because the exterior conjunction came before the war, but the Paris of Treaty wasn't signed until the interior conjunction went back to Libra. And so when this is coming up a bunch, like it seems like more icebergs than nicebergs, I guess. But there is something on the other side of all of this. So if that is an analog, you know, we are moving towards a new place and a new state of peace. And I like at this time the opportunity for our wheels within wheels to like have an echo of something that was really important that Venus is currently doing in this shift towards that Leo way and that sovereign queen. You know, it's also a time where Venus shines so brilliantly when she's at 30 degrees from the sun, and just amazingly bright. So I'm really excited to see that shift and to see in many regards how Venus will take the lead next year in a time of, I mean, it looks like a good amount of crisis.
Sure, of course. Yeah, but this is what we have to go through. We have to go through this fog and just.
It's a very militaristic and a nationalistic print
Yes, of
in the
course.
sky.
Yeah.
Nationalistic on the one hand and militaristic on the other. So
Mhm.
talking about the old regimes, you know, the patriarchy trying to flex its muscles for the last time,
Yeah.
definitely could be, you know, a time that we will need to resist fear more than we do even
Mhm.
now, you know.
Yeah,
But
sure.
you know, I'm in a sense, I am an optimist, but I'm a careful optimist. I'm willing to go through the blaze. I'm willing to go through the storm. And
Faith and knowing that where we
Yeah.
want to head and making sure that's where we head, no matter what. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's where you really have to know who you are at your core, so
True.
that you know what you're willing to do and not willing to do.
Exactly.
And that's very healthy Aries.
Amen to that.
Mhm.
Yes. Yeah. you're right.
Exactly. Because sometimes you do have to fight, but
Yes.
you don't do it out of ego.
No, just standing your ground and yeah,
Mhm.
for
It's
what's
standing
right.
your ground. Exactly.
Exactly. So yeah. So I think at the end of that, you know, that is helpful. The Venus trine. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Venus reigns. Great.
She does. And you know, what was it? I read at the British Museum, which I haven't been to in years. A friend of mine visited and brought me back one of the, there was an exhibition there, and it might still be there, on women in power. It's the feminine power. And in the book, there's a coin with Venus on the back, and I didn't realize she was the patron saint of, or patron of Caesar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I didn't know that she had that warrior
Right.
aspect to her,
Right.
and she does.
Yeah.
There's a lot about her that, you know, the feminine as being passive, when in fact the feminine isn't passive.
Yeah.
It-
Like
I
a theme.
agree.
Yeah.
hmm?
I agree totally. In fact, I'm going to go so far as to say it's Libra, not Aries. That's the sign of war.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
In a
That's very
sense.
good.
You know,
Yeah.
but the goddess that we all talk about had many names before she was named Aphrodite or Venus, before she was a blonde-haired girl coming
That's
from
right.
the coming of her father and the waves back in Cyprus, you know.
Yes.
Botticelli depicted it. She was a warrior goddess, as you were saying, Maurice. She was
Mhm.
Ishtar, she was Isis, she was Inanna.
Mhm.
And she had, you know, one hand the power to destroy worlds. She stood upon lions and winged
Right.
ones at that. And on the other hand, the power to create worlds.
Yes.
And that was stripped
I
away from her by the Greeks, by patriarchy.
Mhm.
Yes. That's true. That's very, yeah.
Oh, it is.
Absolutely.
I mean, and we're also afraid of Kali and Pele, and think, oh my God, they're horrible. No, the other goddesses have those attributes too. I mean, think about Mother Mary, even. There is
Yes.
the Black Madonna.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
It's the, you know, so.
Exactly. Exactly.
all different
That's-
facets of
Which is
the
about the
grand-
void, isn't it? It's about that comes from Nut, you know, the goddess of the sky, of the void, of blackness, of the black sky. So that's so it's, you know, that's chaos as well, but that's also the womb of creation.
Yes,
So it's both. Yeah.
it
Exactly.
is. And to create, you must have chaos.
Yes, exactly.
But you know, you know, I don't know, there's so much research that still needs to be done
Yeah.
where she is concerned. And I mean, she's always going to be the goddess of chaos, but that chaos can be intentional. It's intentional.
It was in the myth, wasn't it? She threw in the golden apple because she made the, you know, the game, the contest between that Paris had to judge between Aphrodite and Hera and Athena. Yeah.
Athena, yes.
Athena.
And so Aphrodite was chosen. So yeah, exactly.
But I think
So
It
was a
doesn't matter who
symbol-
was chosen. What she came here there to do is to show them all how vain they really are.
Yeah.
Yes,
Mhm.
And that's how I see Eris today. You know, I see her as a feminist goddess that doesn't care if she pays
Yeah.
the price socially
Mhm.
for being too direct, for being, you know, so rude
Yeah.
with the truth, with the unbearable truth, the uncomfortable truth she presents. You know, she
Mhm.
doesn't sugarcoat things. And in a way, she needs to learn to be more diplomatic if she wants her message to spread. But in the charts of clients,
Mm.
I see a lot of Aries with people dealing with trauma, dealing with people who have post-trauma, who have been dealing with violence, you know, much like we see Pluto
Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
sense.
I have always the feeling that with Eris is not, she's not the cause of the trouble.
Right.
She's just showing where is
Right.
already something brewing, but under the pretty surface of the Libra
Mhm.
thing. So I think that it is actually very that
Yeah.
Eris is so close with Pluto is actually very logical in a way, because it's all about lifting the wheel and looking what's underneath, and Eris is pointing out what is already, where is already war, and
Oh,
where
absolutely.
what is real.
Yeah, the wide perspective, the global, the collective. Yeah, exactly. As well as the individual, bring them
Right.
together.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
think about what happened with COVID.
Yeah.
And I mean, to me, I see her signature on that
Yes,
too.
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Eris,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, but it is because chaos is, someone was just saying, Nia was saying, just, yeah, it is necessary, isn't it, to have chaos before, you know, antithesis before thesis. So it's as though everything has to be thrown to disarray before it is recollected and put in the proper, in a workable place. And that's where we're at, you know, where our structure is not working and hasn't for some time. And now, before we can transition to a new age and a new structure, we
Oh, yeah.
have to go through this disarray. It's a necessary thing to do. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Katerina had a great point in here. She said Eris may have thrown the golden apple, but the gods chose war.
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah,
It's a very good point.
yeah.
I
Another
mean,
thing about
it wasn't just gods, though. You know, Hera like looked into the wind and whatnot. I think we need to honor the full side of that myth, right? There were some angry folks who were not chosen. I mean, it's interesting that Zeus chose not to partake when he was asked to choose which one was the fairest as well.
He knew what that would do.
Yeah, probably. Right? So he got a mortal who had
Exactly.
shown himself to be like a good judge in a previous contest, but I don't think you bring a mortal into that. I think, I don't know, there's better ways. But I mean, I think one thing that came in earlier, it's like, it's interesting that all we do with these newly discovered astronomical beings is project a myth based upon a name that an astronomer gave. I think most of us will find that Uranus does not necessarily behave to the Uranian myths. You can see some of that in that. I mean, like Neptune, is Neptune as a planet really activating us astrologically in accordance with like the Poseidon archetype? But you know, it's hard to say. And so we have the opportunity now in hindsight to see that the zeitgeist of the times in which Uranus, Neptune, Pluto were discovered, the ways they were discovered have so much to contribute. And you know, we're kind of due to have some reflections on this 2005 discovery of Eris, demotion of Pluto, at least from the astronomical, you know, classification. But all these things are being discovered so rapidly now. It's
Yeah.
hard to do much more than run with the myth, you know, on the name of
Right.
Eris or Sedna or whatever it may be. And I'm really appreciating the astrologers who are working to like get some research-based knowledge here. And I mean, I'm not saying that there's not significant worth for us in exploring the myths of old and this of Eris in particular. But I also think we really need to get into all of the myth. Like Hera was very much contributing in some powerful ways to that Trojan War. Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's
Mhm.
Totally.
And
Brett,
so
if
was Athena.
I could throw in quick, Eris was originally named Xena, the
Okay.
warrior princess from the TV show. So if you remember that myth, it was the queen who went down into the people to fight the good fight.
Hmm.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
so I have astrologically found a bit or equal, I guess, resonance applying the archetype of Xena, the warrior princess, to the Eris archetype.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Mm.
and then there
Good
was
point.
like a new set of criterion for naming astronomical beings kind of rode on Xena's heels into the mix, right? Like
Yeah,
I think
totally.
I don't know, like this would take us too far afield, but that's a panel I'd love to have today of just exploring what's in a name. Like I have a friend whose uncle named some of the moons of Saturn. And you know, he's not astrologically inclined at all. On and Eris, and just how that comes into the collective, right? Typically
Quite
through
synchronistic,
people
though,
who,
isn't it? It's like it happens whether they, whether it's being the name that was given to Pluto, but then they completely ignored it was also the god of Hades. And
no, his daughter also, like there was a criterion then that it had to come from the Roman pantheon, and his
was, okay.
daughter, yeah, and his daughter was also interested in myth and liked like the combination. So
it filled the two.
his
two.
daughter, that's
Yeah.
Percival Lowell. I wish I remembered the name of his daughter right now, and I don't, but I have a book on the shelf I could find. But yeah, that's a really cool story, and it goes to speak. And Ryan, I really appreciate bringing Xena in. I need to watch some Xena. I saw like She-Ra is like kind of a badass Venus Aries archetype that I used to say a little bit as like a joke against like pure mathematical archetype astrology. And then I realized when Venus was initiating an Aries cycle some years ago, and I went and watched some She-Ra, like some old cartoons, and I looked at the Venus cycle when it came out. I was like, wait, that's kind of legit, actually. Like I'm a big She-Ra fan now, so I'm inspired to go watch some
Yeah,
Xena
definitely.
and see what I can learn and see if that works for Eris
that'll
and my
work.
chart and others.
Exactly.
Yeah, we should have a watch party.
Done.
Yeah.
See you later.
I
Excellent.
would love that, as long as there's an astrology commentary that we're all doing, live. I'm in.
That's a good idea.
Well, and we talk about the Greek gods and goddesses, but we forget or don't think about the African gods and goddesses who are equally, I mean, to me, I think that all of them are the same.
Oh yeah.
They just
I mean,
have
all of them.
different
Yeah,
names and different
absolutely.
myths depending on what
Yeah.
culture they
It's
are
just weird,
from.
isn't it? How they really are all the same when you really
Mhm.
look at it. They
They're all
just
the
got
same.
different names, and
Yeah.
the story is a little, but not much. And
Right.
amazing.
I mean, in
Really.
India or China or anywhere around the world, I mean, I've seen so much similarity. It's like, wait a minute, this is the same God. It's just a different name.
Exactly. Well, because basically they are based on the constellations and on the planets, the stars, the sun, the moon, and the constellations. And so really they're all based on the sky, but then linked to the individual and the collective brilliantly. And that,
Yeah.
we call it primitive.
Yeah. But that energy really exists.
It's psychology, and that's what Jung, he realized that this is deep psychology, in fact, but it's not even deep psychology. It's out there as well. It's in the constellations, which is linking us with everything. And it's telling us we are connected to everything. And that's what's so amazing about the myth, when you realize that, and we put all that down and say, oh, they believed in gods and goddesses. Are they primitive? Oh.
as Apollo 13 went into the sky.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And what is it that Elon Musk named his spaceship or his company that goes
Tesla,
into?
you mean?
Hmm?
No, not Tesla. No, no.
No, not Tesla. It was
SpaceX.
SpaceX. Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But he named his ships. I think one of the spaceships was named after one of the gods. I don't remember. Anyway,
They all are, aren't they? I
yeah.
mean, Artemis we've got now, and etc. Yeah.
Hmm.
So interesting.
Anyway,
Okay, so the Venus star cycle. So yeah, as you can see, that's the last year's. Hold on, I haven't got my cursor. Don't know. Well, you can see it anyway. So here we are. This year we've got the August 13th Venus star, and I mentioned that before, but that's at 20 degrees Leo. It takes 4 years for the Venus star to it's repeat. Oh, God, my mind's going to jelly now. It repeats as another inferior conjunction, doesn't it? Or does it repeat it? It's 4 years and then it's 8 years, obviously.
So 8 years is the repetition of the interior conjunctions, which are painted exteriorly every 4 years. So the full star really is a 8-year minus 2 days frequency.
Yeah. And always in the retrograde phase, the inferior conjunctions. And yeah, exactly.
yeah. Love this chart.
Yes, that's beautiful, isn't it? They've done a good job there, AstroSeek. So, and it makes it very clear. And there you can see we're due another one on Leo, and it goes down every 4 years. It goes down a degree. So it'll be at 19 degrees Leo in 2027 on the outside left-hand corner there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so interesting, though. Again, this is a repeat because of that 1771 29 Venus star last year. The next Venus inferior conjunction in Leo at 19 degrees and 27 will be the same one that was in 1776. So
It's the same, and it's also not. So the whole star retrogrades super slowly, so that each point spends on average 104 years in a sign. So the one that's now moving from Scorpio into Libra is not the same like petal of the 5-petaled flower that moved from Scorpio into Libra in 1771. The whole cycle is like a 1280 some.
Oh, sure. But I mean, in that the first time it's come back at that degree, like the 29 degrees Libra one in the 22nd of October, it's that was the first time that had come back since 1771.
Yeah, and so the one that the only reason why I wanted to add this isn't to contradict, but to say it is that petal that was there in 1771 that's now in Leo.
Right.
So this one that we're looking at here, like it has a core resonance that will help us like tune into that echo and to that frequency.
Yeah, exactly. It's another thing that's doubling up on the same sort of repeat. We're getting so many cycles repeat. And obviously the Venus cycle has a 19-year cycle. It's a 19-month cycle, and then the Metonic cycle. So there are obviously, with the nodes and the eclipses, like the Metonic cycle is 19 years, this is 19 months. And so it does make a wonderful pattern altogether that shows us the design of, where we are. And it is it seems to be bringing the same things up, like we said before about the revolution, all of that. So that's the one in 1772. That's the one now in 2023. So yeah.
This is good. When I think about Leo, and of course its ruler, the sun, if we are looking at it from an ego standpoint, Leo, of course, wants to be seen and wants to be on stage. Leo, I'm sure that we all have friends who are Leo, who are shy, who are more inward. And we make this assumption that Leo is all about wanting to be out there, wanting to be shining its light. Well, when you get a Leo that is boisterous, that is see me, see me, see me,
Right.
that one is actually not as evolved
Okay.
as the one who is more is quiet. Think about a king and a queen. They do not have to say anything or do anything to be seen.
Right.
They are seen just because they are.
Exactly.
And when you think about the sun, it doesn't have to do anything. It just shines its light.
Right.
So when I think about an evolved Leo, it has to just be.
Okay. Yeah.
It doesn't have to do.
Yeah.
I love that, Mary, because I think I always feel with with Leo, there are two fears. The fear of being seen, because then we can get rejection, and the fear of not being seen. Because
Yes.
then we
Yes.
don't feel appreciated and loved. And I think that might be a huge topic for this Venus, because Venus is so much about our self-worth. That we heal this feeling of that we need somebody else who says us or who tells us that we are worthy, and that we need this feeling of being mirrored, that our light is being mirrored by another. So the sun does not need a mirror to shine. And I think especially we are coming from an Venus and Capricorn cycle, and now we are stepping into the Venus and Leo cycle. I think the Venus and Capricorn cycle was so much about deconditioning our roles, our gender roles, our role in the last 19 months. Now we are able to step into this Leo light, and now maybe we will face some fears around being seen or being not seen, and can we shine completely independent if there's anybody else looking at us, and have we the courage to really step into our heart's strength, even though that might be, and Pluto in Aquarius, Pluto will be in Aquarius during the Venus and Leo cycle, even that might be that we maybe face the fear of being rejected from our community. So I think there is something around really trusting our own heart and
the source of our own creativity, and no matter exactly worrying how that is taken, it's just expressing it.
Right.
So the individual is, I think we're seeing that a lot already, aren't we? A lot of art is coming out of this period, and it's sort of saying, there's a lot of the patriarchal, negative patriarchy saying that the individual doesn't count, but it's as though it's spurred in us to say, no, we do count, and each one of us counts and has something unique to offer the world, and we're going to express it. So
that's right.
This beautiful thing between Leo and Aquarius. I mean, it's actually in a very beautiful sense when everybody is doing what is coming from the heart, then we are in service of the collective, for the collective.
Right. It's like the drop of water in the ocean.
Yeah.
It's not separate, but there's that little, there's an individuation that occurs. And when I think about what you're saying, Varena, with the axis of Leo and Aquarius, we have to individuate first and shine our light and just for the sake of just being who we are. That's how we do it. And then that light is shined in the collective. If we're unique individuals inside the collective, which is the whole.
Yeah, very good.
And we're not homogenized. We're not trying to homogenize ourselves to be all the same.
That's Pluto and Aquarius.
Yes, it's like that's over now. That forget that. We're going to be the individuals that we are and express ourselves, and we are all part of the whole as individuals,
right?
And I think there's something around expectations too. So with Venus as the ruler, Venus and Leo cycle as the ruler of the South Node in Libra. So in this, do I expect from others that they show me how lovable and how good I am, or do I follow the idea that I must fulfill expectations of others, or do I really allow myself to shine from the heart?
Exactly. And show me the money. It's so much is the worth is put on money, but
yes.
Yeah, exactly. And that Taurus, it's interesting too. That was what I wanted to show too about the 1772 and the 2023 is that obviously Uranus is in the same place almost at 23 degrees Taurus in 2023, and it's at I've lost it now, 24 degrees Taurus in 1772. So it is that. It's the Aquarian note again, Uranus in Taurus, saying this is what we materialize. We materialize creativity. And yes, money comes, abundance comes from that, not the other way around. Oh, money comes first. And you've got to fit in with what the world wants you to be and what it wants you to produce. We produce creativity, and then the abundance comes.
Well, it's what we value.
Yeah, value. Yeah, definitely.
That's what's.
Yeah. So that's what revolution is about too. I mean, that was the American Revolution. It was saying this is what we're going to stand for. We're going to value this, and we're going to make our own rules, and we're going to build something new out of that. And so we're sort of being, obviously we've come a long way from that, but also we've slipped back, as we were saying, but we are being reminded of what it was we wanted to achieve. And we've learned, we've progressed so much since then. There were such blind spots, obviously with slavery and everything else, the founding fathers had slaves. I mean, but they were sort of blind partly, but then, that happens over time. Now we can see that looking back with the wide perspective, but then they sort of close up. That was society, and that was necessary. And they saw only what they wanted to see. And but now we're seeing the whole picture, Pluto and Aquarius. Yeah,
we are. And one of the things, of course, that isn't on for this panel discussion, but I'll bring it up anyway, is that Pluto Uranus cycle that began in the 60s. We're working under that cycle. We've had the first square with that, and we won't know how all of this is going to pan out until for quite a while. But we're coming up to I believe it's the sesquiquadrate with that cycle in the 2030s, when we will be shown what we have, how far we've gone and what we have yet to do.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we're seeing the whole picture now. We're seeing, yes, it's disillusioning, but on the other hand, it had to smash that. Like that, I put that aquarium that smashed on in the beginning, but the slide missed it. But that was about, do we want, now we've had a terrible explosion and it's all smashed. But on the other hand, that's because we didn't know what was happening. There was pressure building up and we weren't aware of that. but that smash happened. It doesn't have to be like that. We are progressively knowing now, and we, you know, we're working through the disillusion, and it's necessary. We should be disillusioned about the deludedness that we were on a delusion, and now it's like, God, we were deluded. But then that has to happen. It has to slip away gradually. You know, we can't just leap from one thing to another. But now we are just making a huge leap. And we're just preparing to make that leap into Aquarius. Wow, yeah, Pluto.
This Leo Venus like petal of the 5-pointed star began in 1991.
Right.
There was a Venus Sun conjunction in 86, I think, in Leo, but that was the exterior conjunction. And 91 is typically accepted as the first year of the wave, the third wave of feminism, which is like a really intriguing thing to pursue. There's a lot of resonance with what was happening at that time and now, actually. And you can see where this star point is. It's like this is the last interior conjunction in the second face or the second decan of Leo.
Yeah.
So we're now, or sorry, in the the third decan.
Yeah, we're in the third,
which is the first decan. It's so for Venus because the star's retrograde, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, traditionally that is a Martian decan of Leo. And so there's a finishing, there's a processing here before this same star point, which in 8 years is going to move into the second phase, which traditionally is the Jupiter phase. So I've been like tracking a bunch of the Venus star things through the phases. That goes into a bunch of research, so we don't want to hear here. But I've seen statements there, and I'm intriguing to see how things will. I mean, it never comes full circle, right? But there's things from 91 that are going to make like really significant announcements, I think, in this particular Venus star. And I mean, one thing I just love about this as part of 2023 is it stands out in so many ways, or it reminds us, I think, that Uranus is in Taurus. Like Uranus isn't as active, and as we see Jupiter stationing retrograde there and those things, but this Venus star really helps us bring in and not forget, I think, some of the other super principal themes that are happening and have been happening.
Yes, it links it all together. It's wonderful, isn't it? I don't know much about the Venus star. I mean, I like to, but that makes sense. The 91, I mean, it makes you think too, also that was, after the Berlin Wall had just fallen between 89 and 91. And so it's as though that was a false start. That obviously communism and fascism and that oppressive state, that's a really, really big thing. It's not just about Russia. It's in humanity, as we say. It's in our shadow. And China then also had been communist since about the same time as Russia, since the early 1920s. And so that had never really gone away. And we thought, oh, that's that. How naive were we? But now it's sort of come back, and this time it's like, okay, that was a false, that was delusional. And we didn't, because we didn't really appreciate what it was about, that it's come back again, and it seems like it was inevitable. And that's interesting. That's tied into.
Well, that's because we hadn't healed it, and we still haven't.
Oh, not at all.
We were also looking in 91, because I was graduating from college during that time. We were in a deep recession.
Yes.
In this country. I don't know if that's the way it was around the world, but here, finding a job
in England, it was,
was a big deal. It was very difficult because of the recession.
Taurus again. Well, no, it wasn't in Taurus. That's what I'm talking about. I'm saying it is now. It wasn't. No, it wasn't. But it must have been Square. Where was it? in 91 Uranus. It must have been 89.
Capricorn.
No,
at
it wasn't Taurus. It was probably Scorpio.
and it actually made that
91? No, Capricorn.
91.
Uranus.
Capricorn.
Uranus
Yeah.
Was it in Capricorn?
Yeah.
Yeah, Capricorn.
Wasn't Neptune conjunct when the wall fell
We
as
had
well?
we had this triple conjunction in Capricorn
Yeah.
around the time.
And that's when the
Uranus.
wall
Yeah.
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 And
That
that
was a rough period.
fell down. Yeah. But then here we are, Pluto's there and saying, no, it didn't. You have to go at it again. But then really, as you say, to get it right this time, to really understand that that wasn't just them as the bad guy, the same old thing. This is in our collective psyche.
And what does getting it right look like? That's
Yeah.
the thing.
And I think what is interesting is to think that the babies that have been born at that time are now coming into their 30s. So, and they are activated, they have been already activated by the Pluto transit. So there might be, it might be very interesting to see that. And I don't know, while you were speaking and I looked at these Venus in Leo cycle and Saturn in Pisces during this time, I thought, yeah, there might be some very creative new solutions and inspiration. And this, everything that has been fallen apart, Venus in Leo asks, how can we create something beautiful out of that in a way? So in
Yes.
a very high the highest potential, so to say. So how can we create something beautiful from what has fallen apart?
Yeah.
And
Where
make
do
a
we
new
yeah.
artwork
Yes,
out
exactly.
of our life.
And also
Yeah.
taking responsibility, like not the bad guy. I mean, Russia is no more responsible than Germany was responsible back then and in the Second World War, and nor is China responsible, but somehow the collective got a hold there of this shadow. And we have our shadow too. It's not like we're perfect, although we've managed to pretend we're the good guys. But, you know, the rest of us aren't perfect either. But then that very deep shadow, it's like a grip came over those particular nations for some reason, but that doesn't, you know, we mustn't judge, and we're not judging the nations anymore. When we have made progress, as you were saying, you know, we're not judging Russia because of this. We're not judging China.
Well, and remember, Russia was our ally.
Yeah, exactly. In the Second World War. Yeah.
I believe it was 1991 when Gorbachev came and had dinner at
With
an
Reagan.
American residence.
Yeah.
That was about 7 blocks from my house in Minneapolis.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah,
wonderful.
so I
Did you
definitely remember that. And so, and if we also consider that time, and if one ascribes to this point of view, that was when the quote, indigo children were born. And if I've done readings for anybody that I'm really excited about, it's those born with a Uranus-Neptune conjunction in Capricorn, because I always love to say to them, hey, when you get older, it'll be your generation who's responsible for marrying science and spirituality. And so what are we seeing, like with the great work of Gemini Brett and the magic that I'm seeing him bring to the science and all the magic that's happening with that, I think is going to kind of be the MO of this generation as they age, and an understanding of sacred geometry as applied to astrology, as applied to spirituality, as applied to astronomy, as applied to quantum physics.
Exactly.
So
It's just the
I'm
tip of
hopeful.
the iceberg.
Well, we are all
that creativity is just waiting under, and yes, and that's the other iceberg. So we need to hit the right iceberg here. On that note, perhaps we should close up with thoughts.
Well, I want to just reflect on a word you just said of creativity, right? Because it's like at the very end, and here it is again, a 2023 forecast I did recently. I was like, wait a second, we're talking about Pisces Taurus, because Jupiter and Taurus, right? And Leo, like, why are we talking about art and like the absolute need for creative expression and for like the art to see us through? And of course we are, right? This is all art, but those are always like kind of the three signs that jump first into responding to the question, who's the artist here? You know, I think Libra as well, where we get that South Node, and I'm that for me. There's this inspiration. There's this kind of Venusian inspiration to remind us to create our way through this thing. And I think the voice of the artist that we're going to hear, you know, and especially see, is going to really kind of reveal, as it always does, like some of the mysteries of what this is.
Yeah, that's the healing part of it. The heart, we have lost so much because art was taken out of the school system, music and all that. And really, when you want to go to the void, when you want to go to the depths, you need art.
Yeah, definitely.
Well
do it.
said.
Yeah, reminds me of that
Art
program
therapy.
about Afghanistan yesterday. The women were doing art and they were expressing themselves with this wonderful art about how they were feeling about being oppressed like this, but they were using art as their outlet. And it was fantastic what they were doing. And it just shows you it's all there and it's going to bubble up under the surface.
And I think it's actually not only about art as we think of art, but really the art of life. So really the seeing ourselves as creators and creatrixes of our own life in a self-responsible and reflected way, but really creating our own life and being understanding that our creativity is fueled by source, but that we are the ones that are in charge, what we're doing with that and what we want to create to create the world.
Yeah, and connecting to source, connecting to the universe, which is
that is so true.
Yeah,
so true, because what we see are a bunch of blocked creatives in the world.
Yeah,
and I think that's why we
block creatives.
Destroying. Well, that is turning about, and we're seeing the turnabout already. So it's like,
I am so grateful that I live in a beautiful small town and had an opportunity still to put my 3, now 5 amazing children through Waldorf education, where creativity and accessing that part of our brain and heart is where quite a large amount of our knowledge actually comes from. And so my daughter, a graduate of Waldorf School here, Pleasant Ridge WaldorfSchool.org, I asked her to create something for me. I was talking to her about Uranus and Taurus, and I asked her to make something, and here it is.
okay.
It's beautiful.
Shattered pieces of colored glass reassembled to form a beautiful, living tree of earth and sky.
That is beautiful.
Making
There you go, Uranus,
out
Taurus.
of something cracked.
Yeah.
I definitely am with y'all on the integration of art and that, if we will, feminine
the superficiality of what seems to be beautiful. So really letting becoming very creative with our own messiness in a way, instead of trying to that everything looks good. So there is something healing in this raw energy of Leo and Eris, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Wonderful. I mean, what do you think? That was great. Robin and Sue and everybody. Yeah, fantastic. Great.
I think you
Okay.
did a wonderful job. Thank you guys so much.
Really,
You covered a
really.
lot of ground and
Yeah.
and very well. This was the Gemini panel. And
Yes. Whoa.
great.
Fantastic. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Oh,
thank
you're
you.
welcome. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Everybody, you're awesome and inspiring.
All
Michaela.
right.
Yeah.
Have a
Let's
Merry
Let's have a
Christmas.
Xena watch party sometime.
There you
Yeah, I'm
go.
down.
Great.
I'm
Yeah.
reaching out to you about that right now. It's really nice to interface with so many of you who I haven't gotten to play with live before. Thank you so much. It was really nice to
Yeah,
tune into
wonderful.
your wisdom and
Oh,
meet
yeah.
you. And I'm very appreciative for EA Zoom for spreading the good word. And thanks for including me.
Oh.
This has been good.
Thank you so much.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
You
Was an
too.
honor.
You too.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Namaste.
No?
Thank you.